Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at something pretty interesting, the very first issue of a new bi-weekly work journal. It's called Thinking in Public, and it's by Alperen.
Yeah, it's basically his notes, observations, things he's learned day to day. A lot of it is about actually using AI and tech, but also, broader thoughts on business industry stuff.
Right, and what we want to do today is really explore this first entry, pull out the practical advice, the useful bits, maybe things that you can use in your own work.
Exactly. It's like getting a peek into someone's detailed working notes. We're talking specific AI techniques all the way to, like, startup strategy.
Okay, so let's get into it. One thing that really stands out is this idea of getting better results from AI, especially when you give it something, well, complicated.
That's a big one. The journal really pushes this idea of breaking complex tasks down, into smaller pieces.
Okay, was there an example of that? How did it work in practice?
Yeah, writing a detailed report. So
Is-
instead of just asking the AI, hey, write this report, they split it into, I think it was 4 distinct steps.
4 steps. Like,
Well, first was just finding potential institutions in the target countries. Then step 2 was researching their specific projects for 2024.
okay.
Then broadening that search, checking the whole country for 2024 projects just to be sure nothing got missed. And then finally actually drafting the report text for each project they found.
And what happened if they just, threw all 4 requests at the AI at once?
Apparently, it just didn't work as well. The notes said trying to do it all in one go tended to, confuse the model.
Ah, makes sense.
Splitting it up, maybe even using different chats for different phases, that gave much better results, like giving it one clear job at a time.
Right, one objective per interaction.
Exactly. And the cool part is, once you've broken it down like that, the note suggests you can often automate each bit. Set up the prompt logic, then just swap out, say, the country name and run it again and again.
Okay, building on that, there was also this idea of comparing different AI tools for the same job. Why bother doing that?
Well, it seems particularly useful when you have a general idea of what you want, but maybe you're not totally sure on the best way to structure it, or you just want to see different possibilities. The example used was developing a training plan.
Right, so how did they actually compare them?
So the process was write one prompt outlining the basic need, maybe some rough ideas. Then you take that exact same prompt and give it to several different LLMs. The chat AIs like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, DeepSeek.
And then just look at all the answers side by side.
Pretty much. You see what each one came up with, find the best bits from each, and kind of stitch them together into your final plan. It's a way to get, multiple perspectives.
That's smart.
Yeah, the notes mention 2 ways to go about it. Either feed the same prompt to multiple models, like we said, or just tell one model your basic need and then ask it to ask you questions open-ended, yes, no, whatever it needs until it gets enough info to give you something useful back.
Oh, interesting. Letting the AI drive the questions. Did they say which models worked best for that training plan example?
They did, yeah. Specifically mentioned ChatGPT, and Claude gave the most useful outputs for that task. Gemini, on the other hand, was noted as being kind of weak, generic, maybe a bit confusing.
Okay, moving away from just generating text or plans, what about using these LLMs when you're, say, stuck trying to set up an automation in something like Make.com or Zapier?
Yeah, there was a really practical tip for that. If you're hitting a wall, trying to figure out a setting or fix an error in those tools, you can actually explain the problem to an LLM.
Just describe it.
You describe it, but the key thing is you also take step-by-step screenshots of what you're seeing in Make or Zapier.
Yeah.
And you share those screenshots with the LLM along with your explanation.
Oh, I see. So the AI actually gets the visual context. It can see the interface.
Exactly. It helps it understand exactly where you are and what you're struggling with. Now, sometimes the AI's knowledge might be a bit out of date, right? And might not know the latest feature.
Yeah, that happens.
So the workaround suggested was clever. Find a YouTube video where someone does the thing you're trying to do. Then use a tool glass was mentioned to grab the full transcript of that video.
Okay, and then?
And then you feed that transcript to the LLM first to give it the up-to-date info. Then ask your question about Make or Zapier, sharing the screenshots too. It's like giving it a crash course before asking for help.
There was also something about creating visuals using negative prompting.
Yes, with Recraft AI as the example.
Yeah.
They were trying to get a specific 2D image of a human brain starting from a source image. So you upload the source, set the style you want, how similar it should be.
Standard stuff.
Right. And the prompt was simple, like 2D human brain. But the key part was the negative prompt. In recraft settings, there's an option like avoid text and image.
Ah, so you tell it what not to include.
Precisely. You explicitly say, don't put text in this picture. And the journal really stressed that this technique, telling the AI what to avoid, is super useful across lots of different AI tools, not just for images. It's about setting boundaries, guiding it away from things you don't want.
Now, one of the really crucial things with AI is checking the information it gives you. How did the journal suggest doing that reliably?
This is a big point. The strong advice was, do not try to verify information in the same chat where the AI generated it.
Why not? What's the danger there?
Well, two main things. First, it can kind of derail the AI from the main task you were working on in that chat. It gets sidetracked.
Okay.
And second, maybe more importantly, if the AI made up the information in the first place, asking it to check itself in the same conversation, that's probably not a very reliable check, is it? It's like asking the source of a potential error to proofread itself.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. So what's the better way?
The recommended approach is to open a completely new, separate chat conversation.
A fresh one.
Exactly. And in that new chat, you paste the specific bit of information you want to check, and you explicitly ask the AI to research that specific point online, and crucially, to provide its sources.
Ah, so you're using it purely as a research assistant for verification, totally separate from the original creation process. Much smarter.
And speaking of research, there was also a comparison between OpenAI's deep research feature and the one in xAI's Grok 3.
Oh, interesting. What were they testing?
The task was specific. Find programs for young adults run by Azerbaijani public institutions, but only programs from 2024 and explicitly excluding startup or grant programs.
Okay, quite precise. How did they stack up?
Well, Grok's deep research apparently scanned about 96 sources in roughly 5 minutes. It found 4 or 5 projects that fit the bill.
And ChatGPT?
ChatGPT's version took longer, maybe 12 or 13 minutes. It scanned fewer sources, only 32, but it actually presented more projects, 8 or 9.
Huh. So, faster scanning versus finding more results, it seems. What about the quality, though?
The notes said both seemed pretty comprehensive in their research and worked independently. But there was a key difference noted, especially with dates. ChatGPT seemed to struggle a bit, or maybe ignore, that 2024 constraint in the prompt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, whereas Grok seemed to stick to the date criteria more closely. So it highlights that even these advanced research tools aren't perfect, especially with really specific constraints like dates. Still need that human check.
Let's connect some of these AI tips back to automating workflows. The notes describe using Make.com to automate posting on X, right?
Yeah, a practical example. It was set up as 2 separate automation scenarios in Make.com.
2. Okay.
The first one used ChatGPT and Google Sheets. Its job was basically to generate draft social media posts daily based on some guidelines, and then just dump those drafts into a spreadsheet.
So AI does the first draft? Makes sense.
Exactly. Then the second scenario kicks in. It watches that same Google Sheet. When someone, a human, goes in and marks certain posts as approved in the sheet. This second scenario automatically takes those approved posts and publishes them on X at set times using the X integration in Make.com.
Nice. So you've got AI creation, human review and approval, and then automation handles the actual posting and scheduling. That's a neat workflow.
And linked to that, there were some specific tips for fine-tuning prompts to get better text from AI, especially for things like those social media posts.
Like telling it what not to say.
Kind of, yeah. The note suggested being explicit with models like OpenAI's 4.0, telling them to avoid certain abstract words they tend to overuse. Words like enhance, navigate, embrace, maybe compass. You know, the ones.
I definitely know the ones. They can make the writing sound a bit fluffy or robotic sometimes.
Exactly. And another tip was about sentence structure. Models can fall into repetitive patterns, like starting sentences over and over with here is, or it's about, or here's the truth. So adding an instruction to vary sentence structure helps make it sound more natural.
Good point. And wasn't there something really specific about stopping em dashes?
Yes. If you notice the AI is just throwing em dashes, those long dashes everywhere, you can add a very direct instruction to your prompt. Something like, you should never use em dashes between words and sentences in the text you generate.
Simple and direct. I like it.
Oh, and before we move on from tools, Gumloop was mentioned briefly.
Gumloop, what's that?
Introduced as a newer automation tool, kind of like Make or Zapier, but really focused on building AI workflows. Apparently, it uses a component-based structure and has templates to make setting up AI automation's a bit easier, something to maybe keep an eye on.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The journal also touched on insights about building businesses, coming from a conversation with a university student who was starting a company.
Right, this part had some really critical lessons, especially for early-stage founders. It highlighted a super common mistake: designing your solution before you actually understand the customer's problem.
And the issue is often in how they do customer discovery, right? Asking the wrong questions.
Exactly. The mistake described was asking questions that are more about marketing or validating their own idea, often yes-no questions, trying to get people to say they like the solution, instead of asking open-ended questions to really dig into the problems people are facing.
So you end up building something based on what you think people need, and then crickets, because it doesn't solve a real pain point.
That's the heart of it. Customer discovery is about understanding the problem deeply. It's not about selling your idea at that stage.
Yeah.
You need those open-ended questions to get people talking honestly about their challenges.
Did the notes give any guidance on like how many of those discovery interviews you should aim for?
Yeah, acknowledging it's not an exact science, but it offered some general ballpark figures. For B2B, maybe talking to around 15, 20 actual decision makers. For B2C, probably more like 60, 70 consumers.
Okay.
But the key point was also that discovery doesn't just stop once you start designing. It needs to be an ongoing thing.
And there was a specific point made about marketplace businesses.
Yes, the classic marketplace challenge. You need growth on both sides of the platform at the same time. The example used was like Uber, you need enough drivers, but you also need enough riders requesting rides. If one side is way bigger than the other, the whole thing doesn't really work well. Managing that balance is crucial.
Another resource popped up in the journal entries too, something about psychology.
The psychological playbook for VCs and startups. It was presented as a way to think about assessing startup teams that goes beyond just the numbers or the business plan.
How does it break that down?
Into three main areas, apparently: founder personality, team dynamics, and how well the team fits the market they're going after, team market fit. The notes mentioned the first part released focuses just on founder personality.
That sounds useful for, well, both sides of the table, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Investors get frameworks for evaluating the people, which is often key. And founders can get insights into what investors might be looking for and also just how to build stronger, more effective teams themselves.
Okay, wrapping up, the journal also had a quick rundown of some recent AI and tech news. What caught their eye?
First up, news about South Korea banning new downloads of the DeepSeek app. This followed similar moves already made in Taiwan and Australia. People who already had the app could keep using it, but no new installs from the app stores there.
Interesting. And then the Grok 3 announcement from XAI.
Yeah, XAI released benchmarks suggesting Grok 3 is really strong in math, science, coding compared to other models. And the journal author added a personal note from their testing. Grok 3's quality felt almost equal to GPT-4o for tasks like writing, summarizing, working with PDFs, web search. Just another sign of how fast the competition is heating up at the top end.
There was also thought about how building AI startups itself might be changing.
Right, using Gamma AI as an example. The founder there noted they hit 50 million users with a team of just 28 people, which, compared to previous startup waves, might have needed, say, 200 people to reach that kind of scale.
Wow, 28 versus 200.
How?
By using AI internally.
That was the implication. Leveraging AI within their own operations let them stay much leaner. And because of that, they were hitting profitability faster and didn't feel the same intense pressure to constantly raise huge amounts of funding. Maybe a glimpse of a different way to build AI-first companies.
What other model updates were mentioned? Anthropic.
Anthropic's Claude 3.7 Sonnet, pitched as their smartest model yet, available on all their plans. Apparently it's particularly good at coding and front-end web development stuff.
And OpenAI had an update too, GPT 4.5.
Yep, announced as their most powerful chat model so far. The claims were around higher EQ, emotional intelligence, and fewer hallucinations. It was apparently rolling out to different tiers of users at the time of writing.
You mentioned hallucinations there. Can you just quickly remind us what that means when we talk about AI?
Sure. Basically, an AI hallucination is when the model just makes stuff up.
Yeah.
It presents information confidently as if it's factual, but it's not actually based on its training data or reality.
Right. Not ideal.
Definitely not.
And just to connect back to that earlier tip, the best way to guard against that risk is still asking the AI to research and give you sources.
Exactly. That forces it to try and ground its answers in something verifiable, and most importantly, it lets you check those sources yourself. It's the best defense against acting on made-up information.
And the last industry tidbit was a bit cautionary about some impressive-sounding numbers.
Yeah, this claim from the Chinese AI startup DeepSeek about having a theoretical 545% profit margin.
545% profit margin.
545%. That sounds unbelievable. What was the story there?
Well, the context was everything. That number was calculated based on just one single 24-hour period, a tiny snapshot. And crucially, it didn't include massive costs like R&D or the huge expense of actually training the AI models in the first place.
No. Well,
Plus, their actual revenue is apparently quite low because they give away a lot of free services and keep prices down. So it was a good reminder that you really need the full picture before taking headline numbers at face value. Wow, okay. That really was a packed first issue of that journal. We went from super specific AI prompting tricks through workflow automation, some hard-won startup lessons, all the way to a snapshot of major industry moves.
it really does show the potential value of this thinking in public idea, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You get these practical ground level tips from someone actually doing the work right alongside their take on the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's like getting practical know-how and strategic awareness all bundled together. It feels different from just reading, say, a technical manual or isolated news reports.
It makes you think, in a world changing this fast, with tech and business evolving constantly, how much does sharing these small incremental lessons and just being aware of what others are seeing and doing actually help us all figure things out and build better?
That's a great point. And maybe a question for you listening. What small piece of your own work, your own learning, your own thinking in public could you start sharing? Even small observations might help someone else navigate all this complexity. Something to consider.